Good afternoon. I call to order the September 26, 2023 regular meeting of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. For the record, my name is Barbara Howard and I'm chair of the commission. Please be sure to silence your cell phones and any other kind of electronic devices you may have. And if you are speaking at the dais or giving public testimony, speak directly into the microphone. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Bjornberg.
Present.
Booty.
Present.
Chair Howard.
Present.
Malblum.
Present.
Nystrom.
Present.
Vice Chair Sandbolt.
Present.
Maston is absent. Struthers.
Present.
VanderEyk.
Here.
There are 8 members present.
Thank you. Let the record reflect we do have quorum, and Commissioner Maston provided proper notice that they have a conflict this afternoon and their absence is excused. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for this meeting. We'll work from the agendas that are available over by the clerk, and I'll go through the agenda and sort out any items to be withdrawn, continued, discussed, or put on a consent agenda. Item number 4, 4708 Emerson Avenue South, Ward 13. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness. Item number 4 will be discussed. That was a long sorting out. The proposed agenda is item number 4, 4708 Emerson Avenue South, Ward 13. We'll have staff presentation, public comment, and commission discussion and action. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve that proposed agenda?
Nystrom, so moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Nystrom. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Struthers. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The agenda is approved. Our next order of business will be to approve the minutes from our September 12th, 2023 meeting. May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Sandbolt, so moved.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sandbolt. Is there a second?
Nystrom, seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Nystrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions?
Melblum abstains.
Thank you, Commissioner Mublum. The minutes are approved. Before I open the hearing to public comments, let me summarize the process for the hearing. Planning staff will present its report, and then commissioners will ask questions of staff, and then I'll open the public hearing, and we'll hear from the applicant, and commissioners may ask questions of the applicant. After that, we'll invite public comment. If you wish to speak, you need to do 2 things. Be sure to sign up on the sheet over by the clerk. If you haven't done this already, you can do that afterwards. And when you come up to testify, you have to state your name and address for the record. Keep your comments specific to the application before us today. After the public comments are complete, I'll close the public hearing and commissioners will then deliberate and act on the applications before us. So, our first item is item number 4, 4708 Emerson Avenue South, Ward 13. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness. The staff report is presented by Erin Kay.
Good afternoon, Chair Howard and Commissioners. My name is Erin Kay, and I'm a city planner in the Historic Preservation subsection of the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development, or CPED. I'm here today to present a certificate of appropriateness application to construct a rear addition on the property located at 4708 Emerson Avenue South in the Lyndhurst Residential Historic District. The property is located near the center of the historic district, as you can see on this map on the left. The house, known as the E.S. Chase House, is Georgian Revival in style, was built in 1923, and the front elevation faces east. I will describe the scope of work, summarize the project's compliance with the design guidelines, and explain the rationale behind the proposed conditions. The site plan shows the current condition of the house and then the outline of the proposed addition on the left side, which will allow for a kitchen expansion and a new rear entry stoop. This is a photo of the rear or west elevation. As you can see, the house currently has a rear stoop and portico with a balcony above. To construct the addition, the applicant is proposing to demolish part of the first story of this elevation. The 3 windows, all of which have been replaced, will be removed. The first story door will be removed, and the second story balcony door will also need to be removed due to the proposed height of the new addition. And here you can see the plan view with the proposed demolitions in dashed red lines, and then the plan for the new addition at right. And here's an elevation view with the proposed demolitions, again, shown in dashed red lines, and then the plan, that elevation for the proposed elevation for the west and the north side, so you can see what that profile of the addition will look like. And here are some colored perspective views of the addition. The addition will be slightly offset from the north wall and is subordinate to the main house. It will be clad in cement fiber panels and have a flat roof. In staff's analysis, the design and materials are contemporary, compatible, and sufficiently differentiated from the historic portion of the house. The windows are similar to what is currently on the house, but the light division is slightly different. And staff finds that the addition complies with the design guidelines. The addition is also located on the rear elevation, which is appropriate. The removal of part of the original rear wall, loss of 3 non-historic windows, loss of 2 historic doors, and the loss of the historic portico and stoop with the balcony above are not considered to affect any character-defining features. For the second-story balcony door, the applicant proposes to infill it with brick salvaged from the original wall from the first-story portion. Staff recommends conditioning that the infill will be recessed by 1 inch so that the historic door opening is still clear and that the historic soldier course brick lintel is retained. The applicant is also proposing 2 impacts to replacement windows in historic openings on the north elevation, which is a side elevation, which is somewhat visible from the public right-of-way. So the westernmost window, which is the one at the right of the photo, is proposed to be infilled with brick, again salvaged from the rear wall because it interferes with the proposed location of the range in the kitchen. The design guidelines do not allow infilling window openings on the primary elevation. However, since this is not a primary elevation, staff finds that this alteration is appropriate and again recommends conditioning that the infill will be recessed by 1 inch so that the historic window opening is still clear, and then also that the historic soldier course brick lintel and stone sill are retained. The other window, which is next to the chimney near the center of the photo, originally contained double French casement windows. They were replaced with a double hung window in 2021. Per the applicant, this is an awkward size for a double hung window, which impacts its functionality such that the top sash falls. And so in order to accommodate new cabinets and the new counter, the applicant is proposing to raise the height of the window and narrow the width to fill it with a better proportioned double hung window. The applicant also proposes to rebuild the soldier course brick lintel and salvage a stone sill from the rear elevation. The design guidelines do not allow alterations to historic window openings to accommodate replacement windows. Additionally, rebuilding the brick lintel and salvaging a stone sill to pair with a smaller window may create a false sense of history. So in order to address the functionality issues of the window, staff recommends conditioning that if replacement is necessary, the opening shall be filled with wood double French casement windows as it was originally. CPED recommends that the Heritage Preservation Commission approves the certificate of appropriateness to construct a rear addition to the property located at 4708 Emerson Avenue South in the Lyndhurst Residential Historic District, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, the westernmost window on the first story of the north elevation shall be infilled with brick that is recessed by 1 inch, creating a reveal. The soldier course brick lintel and stone sill shall be retained. Number 2, the window opening just west of the chimney on the first story of the north elevation shall not be altered. If replacement is necessary, the opening shall be filled with wood double French casement windows as it was originally filled. Number 3, the second story door opening on the west elevation shall be infilled with brick that is recessed by 1 inch, creating a reveal. The soldier course brick lintel shall be retained. And then the final 2 traditional conditions of approval. Staff has not received any public correspondence on this project. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to stay for questions. The applicant is also here today and would like to make a presentation.
Thank you for that report. Commissioners, are there questions for staff? Commissioner Struthers?
You're saying about the window next to the chimney. What guideline is violated by making that change?
Chair Howard, Commissioner Struthers, thanks for that question. So the guideline that we are referring to is under the windows section, and the heading is designing replacement windows. Replacement windows should match the size of the original windows and should not require alterations to the size or proportion of the historic window opening. This includes expanding and partially infilling openings.
So why are we going back to the French doors? Is that required as well?
So we understand that the applicant is having some issues with the current replacement window because of its size. And so in order to preserve that opening, as it was historically, it seemed that the original French casement windows were working, and so that seemed like a reasonable solution to be able to retain that opening but still have a window that might work a little bit better.
So it would be the same size as it is now,
Correct.
but it would have the French opening windows instead of the hung windows.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other
Thank you.
questions for staff? I don't see any. Thank you. I will now open the public hearing for this item, and I understand the applicant is here and would like to present. Just be sure to state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Rickers. I live at 4708 Emerson Avenue South. We purchased the home in 1999, raised 3 children there. We love the neighborhood. We are committed to investing in our home in the city, and we hope to live there for another 25 years. Quarterson has done a beautiful update, or designed a beautiful update to our 100-year-old home. I believe it will continue to maintain the Georgian colonial symmetry by any of the changes that are made, and we're excited about getting this project considered today. Thank you.
Is that it from the applicant? Okay.
Good evening, Board and Commissioners. I'm Jeff Nicholson, 6022 Pillsbury Avenue South. I'm the owner of Quarterson Design Build. So I'm here tonight to speak for Jim and Lisa Rickers. We have some images to share with you. This is the side image of the house with the 2 windows that we propose removing, essentially, and here is the updated elevation as proposed in maybe a little bit more detail than Erin had in her presentation with the new window. Where we differ from staff's recommendation is on, thank you, on condition 2 is where we have a disagreement on that finding. The window sits on the north side, and one of the stipulations in the guidelines is that new windows are allowed in the second bay, and we would make the argument that the chimney divides that north facade into 2 bays, and we are definitely in that second bay. So we're not really altering the existing window. We're basically putting in a new window. The French casement didn't work. The current double hung doesn't work. It doesn't, it's not an architecturally significant window to the facade of the home. It's not on the primary facade. If you look at this overhead view, the yellow triangle is the approximate area on Emerson Avenue that this window can be viewed from. And I would say that's probably even generous, given that looking straight on, you can't really see this window because of the chimney in the way. And we actually, here's actually a view of you walking down Emerson Avenue. So you'll see the Rickers home here on the right, the red brick home. You still don't see the window. You're past the neighbor's front walkway. There's the window. As you continue walking, before you really reach the Rickers driveway, you don't see the window. And as you continue on, the window is behind a chimney on the second bay of the home. So it's one of the arguments we'd make that allowing a new window, as the guidelines suggest, should be allowable in this circumstance. Here's the inside view of the proposed new kitchen that we have. So you'll see the new window in the addition on the left, the new window on the right. If we overlay where the current window is, that would be the current location of the window. The current window is 32 inches off the floor. Tough to design a new modern kitchen with cabinets and countertops with a 32-inch window. It's also an odd size. So we felt by bringing in a new window in the second bay certainly enhances the home, keeps with the architectural integrity of the house. And we believe, as Lisa and Jim have been amazing stewards of this house, this is their home. They've lived in it for 24 years. As you can see, it's been remarkably upkept. Their primary driver for this whole project is to maintain the architectural integrity of their house. That's one of the first things they set out to do when they hired us. It's one of the reasons that I would say we got hired. We do a tremendous amount of work in this neighborhood with these old homes, so we have a tremendous amount of respect for the character and integrity of these homes. And so that was our ultimate goal, is to preserve the architectural integrity of this home. And we think by the letter of the guidelines, there's an opening for new windows in that second bay. And certainly by us putting that second window, a new window in that second bay, it certainly allows the Rickers to get the kitchen they want, preserves the house, establishes the house and gives it the amenities that will last another 100 years, and is a great addition to the neighborhood. I think the guidelines for the neighborhood set out that the question I guess I would have for the board tonight is this window a character-defining element of this house? Is it a character-defining element of the neighborhood? And that's kind of the question before you. We would certainly say it isn't. And therefore, they should, the Rickers who are character-defining elements of this neighborhood, Lisa and Jim, should be allowed to change the window on the north side of their house.
Thank you for those comments. Commissioners, are there questions for the applicant? I'm not seeing any. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, let's discuss.
Oh, okay. We have a letter of support from 12 neighbors. I believe this was submitted today.
Did we get a copy of that? Could you hand it to the clerk? Thank you for sharing that. Commissioners? Anyone want to start? Commissioner Struthers, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Howard. I guess when I look at the guidelines that have been mentioned, the fact that the window has already been changed once, and when you look at the house, and when you see the view if you were walking down the street, it seems to me that this is not the kind of thing that we should be precluding. If it were on the front of the house, I would have a different view, but I think given how far back it is and that it's obscured to some extent by the chimney, I think we should delete condition number 2.
Thank you, Commissioner Struthers.
Could I say one more thing?
Oh, yeah.
I live in the Lyndhurst district, but I've never met the Rickers, and nor have I talked about it with them.
Okay. Other thoughts, Commissioners? Commissioner Booty.
Thank you, Chair Howard. I would agree with Commissioner Struthers. Just looking at our guidelines, I think that the applicant does make a strong case for the bay consideration and having that chimney divide the bay of the second, the side facade of the house. So I would also be open to striking condition 2. I don't know if there's maybe another suggestion of like how we rewrite it, if there's a different way to rewrite it to allow for a change to accommodate the application, but I would also be in support of that.
Thank you, Commissioner Booty. Commissioner VanderEyk?
I mean, I agree with the sentiment. My concern would be getting back to some of staff's concerns relative to false sense of history. So I'd ask the commissioners who feel that we should allow the changes to the window, if you have any concerns relative to false sense of history with the proposal that's before us about rebuilding of the window structure around it, and if there's any suggestions to how we might condition that.
Thank you, Commissioner VanderEyk. I agree with staff on this one, and I agree with you as well. My concern is that it's going to look like it was a older window opening. It has the same lintels, it has the same, or soldier course lintel, it has the same sill, and it would be a different size than it was originally. So I have concerns about that false sense of history as well. And unlike a new opening, if it was a new window opening, we would be expecting it to be complementary to, as opposed to mimicking the historic details. Thank you so much. Other thoughts, commissioners? Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair Howard. I do think in looking at the north elevation of the house, it is interesting to me that the window openings aren't kind of regular, that they are irregular, so that it's an interesting feature to me of this house. That being said, I understand kind of the difficulties and practicalities of making the kitchen function the way you want to, and also it helped to see the interior elevation and the intention of how that interior elevation would look from the inside. Did help me understand kind of one of the reasons you want to change the size of that window. Hearing commissioners' comments and thoughts, idea came to mind, so I am going to make a motion and state a potential revision to condition number 2. I'm going to make this, and that way we can discuss this idea. My recommended motion would be that we approve the certificate of appropriateness with conditions 1, 3, 4, and 5 as written in the agenda, and that condition number 2 would be struck and replaced with the language, a smaller window can be installed in the existing opening, but the infill brick should be recessed by 1 inch.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sandbolt. Is there a second to that motion?
I think before I second, I just want to clarify one thing. And so with that condition, you're essentially saying for the window installment that they would be putting in would have some sort of smaller infill brick surrounding it that would still preserve the opening of the window historically as it was, but still allow for a infill window.
Correct.
Then I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Booty. Let's discuss that some more. Commissioner Bjornberg.
I guess the question that I have about that is still how it relates to the stone lintel at the bottom and the other changes that were proposed in this. And if we are saying that those changes around the window opening can still happen, or if we would like to modify those.
I guess, what are your thoughts, Commissioner Bjornberg? Would you like?
I was going to say, I guess I could have added that.
Yeah. Would you like to see that the stone lintel stays in the location it is currently, or be moved to under the new window, as the sill height would be higher?
Yeah, I think that I have issues about altering the stone on the outside around the window. I don't have an issue with necessarily replacing a smaller window, but it sounds like the intent is to replace it with a shorter window to move that up. So I don't know that design-wise that would really get them the goal that they're looking for. I think that I just have a lot of concerns about altering the surround of the window itself, if that is making sense.
Makes sense to me. Commissioner Bjornberg. Other thoughts? Commissioner Melblom.
Thank you, Chair Howard. My concern with the motion is I think it's just going to look homely, to be quite honest. I don't know how else to say that politely. I'm wondering if it would be better to think about this instead of trying to preserve the sense of the existing opening, but to make the new window, because it's going to be higher, the head height's going to be higher, the sill height's going to be higher than the existing, and it's going to be narrower. What they're proposing would be, instead of having the historic stone lintel and the historic stone sill, just get rid of all of that, and just you have a window set right into just a field of brick, so it looks modern and intentionally different, and that's the way to distinguish this, rather than trying to do something where you're preserving the sense of the existing opening, but something else overlaying it that doesn't fit fully within it. That just concerns me, because were we working on a warehouse or an older building that had a much more industrial character, the palimpsest of, I think what's being suggested would look fine on a home like this. I think it's just not going to be visually attractive, and I have the concern of putting that onto the homeowners.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. We do have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any further discussion related to that motion?
Chair Howard, could you repeat that motion for us?
I would ask Vice Chair Sandbolt to repeat it.
So the motion as stated was that we would approve with conditions 1, 3, 4, and 5 as listed in the agenda, but the condition number 2 would be revised to state that a smaller window could be installed in the existing opening, but the infill brick surrounding smaller windows should be recessed by 1 inch.
So I guess the best way to move forward would be to call the roll on this motion. Let's do that.
Commissioner Bjornberg.
Nay.
Booty.
Aye.
Chair Howard.
Nay.
Melblom.
Nay.
Nystrom.
Nay.
Vice Chair Sandbolt.
Aye.
Struthers.
Aye.
VanderEyk.
Nay. Wow, that was intense.
There are 3 ayes and 5 nays.
Thank you very much. That motion failed. Other thoughts? We can have more discussion. We could have another motion put on the table.
May I approach with the new?
I'm sorry, we need to continue discussion. Thank you. Commissioners? Commissioner VanderEyk?
Okay, I would suggest that we pass, and I'll make a motion, but I just want to throw this out there and see if, before I do that, and we take another roll call, that we approve with the staff's findings, and if, it seems to me that if the homeowner wants to go back to the paper on this, then there's an opportunity to do that. That our responsibility is on the letter of the guidelines, and it is my feeling at this moment that there isn't and I don't want us to design it. so I, with what we have before us today, I don't feel comfortable designing by committee, so that would be what I would suggest. But before I make a motion, I'd ask that other commissioners, if they feel otherwise, speak now.
Thank you, Commissioner VanderEyk. I agree that we shouldn't be designing by committee. We always get in trouble when we do that. Right. Other thoughts, commissioners? Commissioner Bjornberg?
I guess I would have the question probably to staff of if we approve this as is written, is the applicant able to come back if they change that?
Chair Howard and Commissioner Bjornberg, if you approve as the conditions are written, the applicant has the ability and the right to appeal. So that would be the course of action should they disagree with the HPC's decision. They have their right to appeal either the entire approval, or in this case, probably would be a particular condition. Thank you.
Vice Chair Sandbolt, did you want to say something? No. Commissioner Mutlow.
I'd like to make the motion that I agree with Claire. I'd like to make the motion that we approve the staff's findings as recommended, items 1 through 5 as written.
I'd encourage you to follow the recommended motion on the agenda.
Sorry. I recommend that the commission approve the certificate of appropriateness to construct a rear addition to the property located at 4708 Emerson Avenue South in the Lyndhurst Residential Historic District, subject to the following conditions 1 through 5.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. Is there a second to that?
VanderEyk seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner VanderEyk. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Bjornberg,
Aye.
Booty,
Aye.
Chair Howard,
Aye.
Melblom,
Aye.
Nystrom,
Aye.
Vice Chair Sandbolt,
Nay.
Struthers,
Nay.
VanderEyk.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes and 2 nays.
Thank you. That motion passes. And that concludes our public hearing items. We'll move on to announcements. Do commissioners or staff have any announcements or commission business? And we'll start with staff.
Thank you, Chair Howard. Andrea Burke, Supervisor for the Historic Preservation Team in CPED. Just 2 quick announcements. One, the Preserve Minnesota Conference hosted by the State Historic Preservation Office kicks off this week, starting tomorrow evening and goes until Friday. It is in Mankato. I know some of us, well, at least all of our staff will be going. I know Commissioner Melblom will be going, so I encourage you to attend, but I understand this late in the game, you may not have had advanced planning if you are not planning to attend. And then the other announcement is that the appointments are open appointments for commissioners for the next upcoming 2024 year. So that is on the city website. So applicants can go in and apply to sit on the HPC. We will have 1 for sure vacancy. I will not disclose another at this point in time, but for those that I have reached out to for reappointments, just be sure to get back to me probably definitely by the end of October, just with your decision of whether or not you would like to be reappointed for another 3-year term or not. But I encourage commissioners to, if you know a candidate that you feel like would be a good fit to sit on the commission, to encourage them to apply. Thank you. No further updates.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have any announcements? All right, with that, we've completed all the items on the agenda for this meeting. I'll ask members and staff once more if there are any matters to come before the commission. There being no other business to come before this meeting, and without objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Our next meeting of the Heritage Preservation Commission is our retreat on Thursday, October 5th. We'll see you all there next week. Thank you.